Pro Football Focus went through and they ranked the wide receivers, the rookie wide receivers. And interestingly enough, Jerry Jeudy is leading the Broncos receiving yards. I hadn't had a chance to really look at it, and I hadn't really thought about it very much. Like, because right now it's like there is no wide receiver one. There's just players and playmakers, and what can they do for you? And Jerry Jeudy actually is leading the team in yards. Pull that up here. He's got 234, if I have my math correct here. Yeah, 234. Noah Fant's got 219, and Tim Patrick's got 209, coming off that 100-plus yard performance against the Jets. And then after that, KJ Hamler's got 78. So and Sutton only has 66 because he barely played. So the Broncos so far are getting, I guess, a decent return out of their rookie wide receiver, only averaging 58.5 yards per game, but he's still leading the team. But PFF did their top 15 ranking of the rookie wide receivers. This class, by the way, is
it was
so
historic. We all
good.
knew it was historic.
Yeah. Well, but sometimes we say that, and sometimes it doesn't end up being that case. But, look at the effect CeeDee Lamb is having so far on the league. Now, you talk about how he's not seeing number one corners. He's still producing.
Well, I just say you can't knock his production. I just, the other side of this is the context. He's up against CB3s, and he's better than that. It's like we talked about last night when Randy Moss first came into the league, and he was seeing corner threes, and that was just not fair. And that's kind of the thing. Now, not about comparing CeeDee Lamb to Randy Moss, and I'm also not saying he's, but the context here is the larger thing. But he's producing, and you can't knock him for that.
Number 2 on their list is Justin Jefferson, who's coming on.
Yeah, he's got volume targets though. I don't know. I want to see it long term. Let me put it that way. I think right now everybody's doubling up on Thielen and he's getting volume targets. I want to see it long term.
Sure, and he
but
has
I can't
to
deny
be,
what he's done so far.
Yeah, I was going to say, the design for what he has to do is he's not going to be Stephon Diggs because they're not the exact same kind of receiver. But what he can be is somebody that will take the targets away from Adam Thielen and let Adam Thielen do what he's doing.
Kevin Walter had some big games opposite Andre Johnson, too. I'm just saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
To put some Gary Kubiak wide receivers in perspective.
There you go. Chase Claypool is number 3 on this. And again, this is on the heels, of course, of his 4-touchdown performance.
Absurd game.
Yeah, you couldn't possibly keep him out of your top 5 when he has a franchise record kind of performance, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise. With 4 touchdowns, and we got hit up earlier on Twitter from one of the guys that chimes in. I'll pull up his name here in a second, but I think it was John, and he said, boy, what it would have been if the Broncos took Chase Claypool instead of KJ Hamler, and it's like, well. Listen,
you don't know.
It's not what. Well, first of all, I'm not done with KJ Hamler. Like, I don't think anybody should be done with KJ Hamler. And he came back and said he's not either. It's just, boy, Chase Claypool looks like he could be a star.
It does, but he would play the Jeudy role, and that would make one of them would be off the field. Mm-hmm. Like in terms of what they do, it's not just this isn't Madden. You don't just throw 3 guys out there.
Well, and we're also looking at it from the perspective of, okay, well, Courtland Sutton's not out there right now, so. Mm-hmm. If you had Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, a mix of Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler, well, that's a different receiving core than without Courtland Sutton. And Tim Patrick's kind of the X now, and then you're putting Jeudy in the slot, and you don't even have KJ Hamler available to you. Well, yeah, of course, under those circumstances, who wouldn't want a healthy Chase Claypool? Mm-hmm. Versus,
we see the numbers and we're like, I want that. But in reality, what role does he have and who are you sitting to put him on the field? And, the reality is it's not Deshaun Hamilton. You'd be sitting Jerry Jeudy because they play 2 different positions at receiver.
Number 4 is Laviska Shenault. And in the way they're using him, I'm 100% with this. Yeah. They're moving him all around.
Which they have to. They're one of those teams that has to do that. So
yeah, but that's part of the reason you're a playmaker, right? We just got done talking about it. A guy that can line up a running back, line up receiver. You could do all sorts of interesting variations with him on the field. He's a matchup problem. That's what they did at CU. That always drives me crazy sometimes when depending on the team that drafts a guy, if he's having success doing something in college and they draft him and kind of hope that they can fit him and mold them into their system, or like if you'd just taken Laviska Shenault and said, okay, we're just going to line you up at the X, and that's just what you're going to be. Mm-hmm. You're going to be our contested catch guy. You'll do well with that because you're really good at it.
Right.
But we're not going to utilize your other skill set. I sort of hate when coaches do that.
Right. And I looked at Laviska Shenault as kind of what everybody wanted Sammy Watkins to be. You know?
Right. Yeah.
That's who I think he is. I think he's a playmaker. You put the ball in his hands, let him create. And so he's one of those guys that can create. So you put the ball in his hands and let him create in space. And I think that, that's his best bet. You don't do that for a guy like Deshaun Hamilton. Like, it's just a different position.
Jerry Jeudy comes in at number 5 on this list. And it comes on the heels of that catch he had against the Jets and the fact that he is leading his team in receiving right now. But there's a certain amount, of course, that you just know there's more there. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of is a little bit of the frustration when you see some of these other rookie receivers popping. CeeDee Lamb, putting up fantastic stats in Dallas's offense, which you knew he was probably going to be able to do because of what the offense ultimately is. You're seeing Justin Jefferson having multiple 100-yard games. He had back-to-back before this game against Seattle. He had back-to-back 100-yard games. Henry Ruggs just went off for over 100 yards with a massive catch and a signature win for the Raiders. So you see all these rookies popping. Jerry Jeudy had that one catch, but you almost feel like because of all the shifting at quarterback, we still have not had a chance to really see him break out.
And that's why when we talk about the immediacy versus the context of a season, we don't know what to judge Jerry Jeudy on. And no pun intended there with the Judge Jeudy thing, but
nice.
We don't, if we had cut off the season at the 4 or 5 game mark for Noah Fant last year, you'd tell me he was a bust. If 4 games in, there were guys out there saying that. There was hot take radio in town was saying that Noah Fant was soft and he's a bust and, making up all kinds of nonsense. And, after the Browns game, when the light came on, it clicked and he finally got going. Then all of a sudden, he had a historic, near historic. I mean, he had a top 20 all-time rookie tight end season. So, I think you got to let it play out. You like what you see, the flashes here or there, and you hope those flashes become consistent, and then he becomes big play Jeudy, I think that having him number 5 now is fair, but I also think that ranking guys through 4 games is,
it's all for fun. But when I look at this, first of all, the first thing that pops in my head is I told you at the very beginning that, wow, boy, what a class. This is going to be a really fun class to see how it ultimately shakes out over time. But 2, I look at the scenarios here of why they're ranked where they are, and I'm pretty encouraged about where Jerry Jeudy can ultimately go if we ran this poll again, or these top 15 again in 5 more games. Let's just wait 5 more games and see where they're at. I bet Jeudy climbs a little bit because Drew Lock will be back. He'll have his quarterback back throwing him the ball, and especially now with the wide receiver 1 not really being a position for this team. I mean, Tim Patrick's going to be where he's going to be, and you're going to utilize him as a bit of that contested catch and in the Courtland Sutton role. But I think Jerry Jeudy's going to have opportunities to eat. Now, one thing that you need to have happen, you need to get Noah Fant back. Mm-hmm. That's going to help those guys, both of those guys as well.
Yeah, I think that I think the biggest thing that'll help Jeudy out is the fact that Tim Patrick had a coming out party against the Jets.
Absolutely,
and then you recognize that you have to respect him. And once that happens, once you have to respect both receivers, then you don't get rolled coverage because you can't. You got 2 receivers, and you just got to you got to man it up, or you got to play whatever your scheme is. You're playing your scheme, but you got to find a way to balance the coverage and make sure you don't just leave a guy open. And that's why the teams like the Vikings, when they had Diggs and Thielen, were so successful. So as long as Tim Patrick can continue to maintain that he's a legitimate receiver in this league, it's going to free Jerry Jeudy up to do more.